This is Michael McKeon, a.k.a. Morris Fletcher, a.k.a. Chuck McGill. You know who I am. But it's time for Inside the Gilliverse with Eric Broadbent.
You're watching Inside the Gilliverse, talking all things Breaking Bad, El Camino, and Better Call Saul. Brought to you by the Royal Baubles Collection at bobbleheads.com. For all your favorite characters from the Gilliverse, shop the Royal Baubles Collection at bobbleheads.com. Also brought to you by Rode Microphones, the official microphone supplier of Inside the Gilliverse. See their entire lineup today at Rode.com. Now please welcome your host, Eric Broadbent.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Season 2, Episode 20 of Inside the Gilliverse, talking all things Breaking Bad, El Camino, and Better Call Saul. My name is Eric Broadbent, and it comes with great pleasure to welcome tonight's guest. You may know him as Dr. Barry Goodman from both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Others may know him as the voice of Caustic from one of the world's most popular video games, Apex Legends, and so many other projects. Mr. JB Blanc. JB, how are you?
I'm terribly well. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, I'm terribly happy to have you here. That's great. Thank you so much. It's nice for you to, make this happen for us because we had some mishaps here about 2 weeks back, but you were free tonight and you gave us 60 minutes of your time. We thank you so very, very much. What have you been working on? What have you been working on?
Well, I'm busy directing video games these days. I direct a lot of video games. I am returning for season 3 of Barry. As Batir, who's Noah Hank's boss, which is really fun because it's one of those shows out there that's kind of got a bit of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul about it. It's dark humor, and it's a genre I really, really love, and I'm very excited to get involved in that. So, yeah, it's been a busy time. I direct all of Blizzard's games, so Overwatch, World of Warcraft, Heroes of the Storm, Diablo, and everything that Blizzard does. And I'm also directing Fortnite and sometimes League of Legends. I get to play characters in all of those as well. I've had a long video game career, which has been great. So it's been very kind to me.
Now, do you play them?
Who has time to play video games? I play them I dabble for research is what I'll say. I have a very, very crazy busy life now because I'm directing and I still do a lot of voice performance and then still maintain my on-camera career. So it's like juggling chainsaws, my life, and scheduling is my worst nightmare. So I don't have a lot of time to play games.
Yeah.
But I love the genre. And most of all, I love the people who work in the genre because they're so enthusiastic and so they love what they do so much that it's just a very fun thing to be involved in. And it's transferring now because games want to be movies and movies want to be games. And so the crossover is becoming it's very, very self-evident now. And now I'm directing performance capture, which is kind of like directing a movie and a play at the same time. So that's been a whole new adventure that I've started doing, which is tremendous fun.
So people can be transformed like virtually into the game, all the movements. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. So during any video game, you'll have these cinematics where the game takes over the controls and basically shows you a bit of storyline that then keys into the next section of the game. And so it's kind of like, for actors, it's kind of like rehearsing theater. You're in a giant volume. It's a dead space. So because you're recording audio and you've got people in Lycra suits. We've talked about motion capture for many years, but this is performance capture where you as well as the Lycra suit with the reference points all over it, you also have a head camera and a camera in your face and bright lights in your face. And so the whole performance is being recorded live and digitized. And in the early days when I started doing this, you do a bit and it would disappear for months to go to render farms and become a 3D image. Nowadays, they're playing the images while you're on stage, almost live.
Wow.
So you can actually see yourself in the environment, but you're actually standing on a box and it's supposed to be a ravine and you're playing to a white cross. And that's the guy down at the bottom of the ravine. And then the other guy is playing to a yellow cross up on the somewhere else on the volume. The space is called the volume. And there's the way they made Avatar and all those kind of things. So it's funny because what you need as an actor is kind of old theater techniques from way back, which is, as ancient as the Greeks. And yet the technology is changing. I mean, the technology can get updated during the course of the development of one game.
Sure.
Because it's developing so fast. So It's great though, because as the technology has gotten better and better and better, the quality of writing, the quality of acting, the quality of directing, and the animation has had to improve with it.
The bar has been raised.
Yeah, and so now these, we always talk about in video games, we talk about an immersive experience, and that's what you want from a good TV show or a good movie. And we're really, really improving on that every time I work on one of these things. It seems to get better and better. So it's an exciting industry to be involved in.
It sounds like it. Well, you nailed it when you talked about technology changing so quick, or even sometimes in the middle of a game. Some of our fellow Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul alum, Michael Mando and Far Cry. And I mean, that's not that long ago, but look, I mean, it's light years in technology years. And, Giancarlo Esposito now and Far Cry again, right? And you're looking at the improvements they've made from that game to the next. It's just absolutely beautiful. I'm curious to ask you, and I don't want to go too deep into video games. Obviously, that's a really big thing. But I don't play a lot of games. But one game I play a lot, and I swear we've got our money back in spades, is Grand Theft Auto 5.
Nice.
Now, I love that game, and the fact that the storylines, and here's when you talk about story, like you get so involved in these characters' lives. And you follow them, and it's just like you don't, even when you've played the game and you've beat it, it's hard not to. I mean, it's hard to not skip. I mean, you don't want to skip the cutscenes because there's so much story, right? So
yeah,
kudos to the writers.
It's a balance between not distracting the player from the game, but also giving them something that's going to be an experience. And I do think that we've discovered that engagement with the characters improves the user experience when you're playing the game. If you give a damn about the characters. I think that's exactly the same about with TV. I mean, part of the beauty of Breaking Bad is that you're with Walter for so long, way before he goes off the edge. And even as he goes off the edge, you still kind of remember why he got into this in the first place. And it's this marvelous manipulation of the audience that you get where you're like, I hate what he's doing, but I know why he's doing it. And where would I be in that situation? And that's what I was constantly thinking, because I was a fan of the show way before I worked on it.
Good.
That you're constantly thinking, I'm being dragged into this, but I feel for him at the same time. And so I think that connection, I think one of the worst crimes when I come out of a film is I didn't care about the characters. They didn't engage me. I didn't want to come along on the ride with them. And so anything that happened in the film kind of gets negated by that. And I think when you're playing a game, which could be 100 hours of gameplay or 70 hours of gameplay, that engagement is going to make that experience much, much better. So the quality of performance has had to improve, and we use these phenomenal actors now.
There's no room for slacking in any department when it comes to video games. Just none.
No, and stepping over onto the directorial side, I've learned that in spades. I mean, as an actor, you get to come in, do your thing, and bugger off. Mm-hmm. This is a different experience because my meetings have meetings about whether to have meetings have meetings. So I'm a little zoomed out, to be honest.
I can imagine. We'll try to make it easier on you tonight.
This is fine.
Just to go backwards for a second, I would love to see this, but at the same time, I wouldn't, because I could see some of your fans crying. I asked you if you played video games. So as I told you off the air, I'm a musician, and I thought, this goes back years, I thought I was going to challenge a family member to a Guitar Hero game. I thought, well, I can play guitar. I can play Eddie Van Halen riffs. I'm going to kick your ass on Guitar Hero Van Halen. And, you really got me. It's like, and I hit the first note, and I went, and it was like basically... Like I didn't hit the note, right? I'm like, oh my God, I was so crushed. My ego just went like this. I can imagine some fan is playing Apex Legends and there's Caustic right beside him at a machine and playing you, and you die the first time you touch the ground. That'd be so ego crushing. But then again, like you say, you don't play, so.
But after like 300 or 350 video games, dying is something that I'm very familiar with. In fact, I play a lot of roles where I'm kind of, oh, who's that really interesting guy that we really care about? And
he's dead.
Dear. Yeah, he's gone. Come on. Never mind.
Typecast as a guy that dies. Well, before we jump...
I could get the nickname Tutorial and die.
Oh, yeah. Well, before we jump into some really awesome fan questions that are coming in, I told you that we're going to be a little surprise couple questions here for you. And if I don't ask them now, I'll forget. Yeah. So my co-host who's on hiatus right now, writing this little TV show called Better Call Saul, Thomas Schnauz, he come up with this thing. What does it smell like in the Gilliverse? The Gilliverse has a smell, and it could smell like gas and cinnamon. Okay, so it smells like this and this. So I'm going to ask you what you think it is. There is a right answer, and then I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. So what do you think it smells like in the Gilliverse? It's two things.
I think it smells of chemicals and dry dirt.
Okay. Both are wrong. And the answer is bacon and fear.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now, that's the right answer. So you can remember that. We've had some good ones. We've had smoke and regret, and we've had lots of gun smoke and things like that. So and this is in honor of you, we don't have a lot of voice actors on the show, but because of you, I come up with one, and I have the answers. What does it sound like? And everyone in the chat, you can guess as well, too. What does it sound like in the Gilliverse? And here again, it's a 2-word answer, and it sounds like something and something.
My goodness me. That's really hard. I feel like I've been really put on the spot there.
Mm-hmm. I really put you on the spot.
Sound like in the Gilliverse. God, that's too hard, Eric. I don't know if I can come up with anything. There's a shitty voice actor I am. Gunshots and bubbling flasks.
Okay, I like them both.
Wrong.
The true answer to that, and we'll never ask this question again, is anything from Van Halen's Fair Warning album and a cold start of a 1968 Chevy Camaro engine. There you go. That's the answer.
Okay, that's cool. That's much cooler than my answers, and I feel like I've let the whole site down.
It's all good. It's all good. You had no idea this was coming. Well, a little bit. Anyways, let's jump over to some really cool questions coming in here. There's a super chat from Lisa Love. She says, when you showed Mike around town in Mexico after helping him heal, did you get a sense that you had to explain that these were real people and there's always another side to the cartel life? Obviously talking character here, but what do you think there?
Oh my goodness me. That's a really difficult question. Yeah. Listen, I think he was completely kept away from all of that, and he knew the risks of the people he was involved with, and because he had a legitimate life, he had to be very careful about how he covered that. And, he was always very suspicious about getting involved in any of this. And I think, his loyalty to Gus was on the condition that he kept himself very much to himself. So I don't know how much involvement with the cartel he had. And I think he probably just honorably stuck to the role he was given and understood those rules very carefully.
Well, that makes sense. I've heard a lot of people speak really highly of Jonathan Banks. Was it nice working with him?
Oh my goodness me. You can't speak lowly of Jonathan Banks. He's literally, I swear to God, and people say this a lot, but he is literally one of the nicest people I've ever worked with. And he also has a really sardonic sense of humor, very dry sense of humor. And so, he does things like, you'll go in, you're on set, you've got the chairs where you sit, and other people come and sit in the chairs. I don't give a damn. And you come off set, and he'll leap up, his 70-year-old man or whatever he is, and go, "Hey, you've been working. You should sit down. You should take it easy, man." I remember we were shooting for Better Call Saul when I was in actually the doctor's office, and there was a kid on a bike who just rolled up, and he goes, "Hey, kid, how you doing? You like school? You work hard? You want to be in the show?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, I go in and do my scene. I do another bit of the scene. I come out. He's on the phone to Caustic. He's going, no, he doesn't have a headshot or a resume. There's no agent here. We're just going to get the kid in the show. Okay. I don't care where you do it. I don't care. Wow. And he's done that a number of times. When we were shooting the scene, it was the chicken feeding scene.
Okay.
And we go out to New Mexico. It's May. It's supposed to be the desert in Mexico, and it starts snowing. It's 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. It starts snowing. It's Albuquerque. It's very high, and when I say snowing, it's dumping thick, wet flakes. So Jonathan and I get put on hold. We get put on weather hold, and he's like, "You want to go get something to eat? Let's go get something to eat. We'll go get something to eat." So we go and we eat, and he, he's very interested in my life, and he gives me some counseling on some situations in my life, and it's just amazing. You want to go see a movie? Let's go see a movie. War Horse. I haven't seen War Horse. Let's go see War Horse. So I end up in the cinemas, next to Jonathan Banks watching War Horse. And halfway through, he leans over to me and he goes, "I'm being emotionally manipulated, and I love every second of it." So John's he's just a wonderful human being and a very kind soul. And
man, he's done it all. You know, you've got nothing but his experience to learn from when you're working with someone like that.
I guess you can't say no when Jonathan asks you to go to the movies, for sure.
You're going to the movies.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
That's your afternoon set. Yeah.
What a kind soul. What a kind soul, for
He's
sure.
a lovely fella.
Yeah.
Lovely fella.
That's a pleasure. Here's a question from VZ McCoy. Says, doctors take an oath not to do harm. How do you think Dr. Goodman justifies working for someone like Gus?
I think he'd find it very difficult to justify it. I think, you know, people justify all kinds of things when it's in their self-interest. We don't necessarily know what the relationship is with Gus, although they are old friends. So I think he justifies it through his loyalty to Gus and his friendship with Gus. I think he's aware of how powerful Gus is. I don't know necessarily that he's afraid of him, but he understands what he's involved in and he's going to do what he's told. He also probably feels a sense of protection from Gus, being that Gus is so powerful. And that leads me on to my next, you know, amazing fellow, Giancarlo Esposito. I mean, we still keep in touch. He's a super, super fellow. We had a lovely time working with him. But when he goes into the zone, he goes into the zone. When he goes into Gus, he's Gus. And it's terrifying. Even sitting next to him in the back of a car, it's terrifying.
Is it?
He's such a powerful actor. Yeah, he's just... And you know what? Working with actors like Jonathan and Giancarlo, it's like playing tennis with someone who's better than you. You up your game. You feel like you're doing better work because of them. And when you're sitting staring at Jonathan Banks, you know, with a couple of cameras on you, you up your game. You have to up your game because he's that good. And he will take you into the scene in a way that you couldn't necessarily get you there yourself, which is the privilege of working on such high quality shows like that.
I think you might appreciate this. In the music world, I look at it as I always try to play with musicians, you know, light years ahead of me, because it kicks you in the ass, and it may be hard to accept for a moment, you know, but then next thing you know, it's like you're working really, really hard. That bar is always shifting, but you're always aiming for it. And I'm sure it's the same in the acting world.
Yeah, I play guitar too, and I once you get over that ego of, wow, I'll never be as good as that. And actually just show me what you did again. Okay, now I get it. Okay. And it's often not as complicated as you were building it up to be. You know, I think we all get to that stage where you're like, I'm kind of stuck and I can't get any further. I'm a good-ish guitarist, but I'm not breaking through. And I'll always try and find someone, you know, someone better to play with and try and, you know, up the game that way, because it definitely works.
We have to do some guitar talk sometime when we can find about 7 minutes of spare time that you have between now and 2024. We'll find it. We'll talk about guitar. Yeah, I can imagine.
Good luck with that.
I'm glad to hear that you play. That's awesome. That's awesome. Here's a question from Mrs. Ignacio Vargo. Says, I like this question. What is the most challenging voice work you've ever done? Has there been something that's just like, you know, I'm sure some have been easier. Some have been in that we always appreciate those ones that come through that are easy. Those hard ones. Is there anyone that really gave you a struggle?
Yeah, whenever I'm asked to play a kid, which happens, you know, it's often the other extraneous roles, like you're playing so-and-so in a game or in an animation, and then they throw you, you know, 7 other characters. And when it's a young character, or because I have this voice, you know, if you throw me Bane, you know, I look at Bane and I say, well, big, powerful guy, Latino, but a very smart guy. And so that's why we came up with this voice that was very powerful, but was very intelligent at the same time. And Caustic is, you know, deeply troubled and has gone through hell and has slight lung damage, and therefore, you know, he's in this very kind of growly place. But when I have to work against that and suddenly be this young guy, or you know, that's when it becomes most challenging, ironically. And then, you know, there are some characters that, you know, there aren't. You know, often when you're auditioning for a character, you get a kind of bio of the character and an image, and some of it's just not very well written, and they don't really know what kind of character it is. So you have to do the work to try and match what their expectation is with what you can do. But actually, the hard stuff is the grueling stuff. It's things like doing a Call of Duty where you have to scream for 2 hours solid, where it's really going to damage your instrument, which is what I regard a voice as. The hardest one I did the voice of the Hulk with a couple of other actors for the Ed Norton movie. And that was, at one point they wanted us to scream for 12, 13 seconds
a big long bellow like that.
Wow.
Sorry if I've just crushed anyone's ears. And what happens if you try and do that for 14 seconds, I don't recommend you try this at home, is you black out. And me and a very famous voice actor called Fred Tatashaw, who's played the Hulk for years, we both blacked out during that screen.
And fell?
And yeah, absolutely went down. I just felt the world closing in because I had no oxygen left in my brain. So, you know, there are performances you have to be very dedicated to as an actor, but that's probably one stage too far. But yeah, so it's the ones that are physically grueling, and all video games actually. If you do a 4-hour video game session as an actor, you're pretty pooped when you come out if you've given it what it needs.
Mm-hmm.
I think people, you know, sometimes you get asked in interviews. This is my least favorite question: is, you know, do you do any legitimate acting?
Oh, yeah.
And it makes me crazy because I've been very lucky. I've worked across the range in this business.
Mm-hmm.
The hardest thing I've ever done is voice acting. And I don't really like to call it voice acting because it is acting.
No.
People think it's doing a voice. And if you're doing a voice, you're not playing a character. You have to, even no matter how goofy the voice might be, you know, it's still got to be rooted in the truth of a character. And so it's a taxing, it's harder, I think, than doing on camera. You have a set, you have props, and you have a costume. They're all helping you to tell the story. If you're just voice acting, if you're just acting with your voice, you have to cry with your voice, smile with your voice, frown with your voice. All that's got to be portrayed, you know, vocally in a sort of little black box with some double screen glass where you're convinced a load of people are talking about what a crappy actor you are on the other side, and actually they're just ordering lunch. It's a very unnerving situation to be in, and then to find character through that without all the extras and the props and the costumes, that's a difficult task.
I agree 100% that it's more challenging than traditional acting. And I've seen video games where they've had amateurs, you know, inexperienced actors, sometimes volunteer actors, and you see it right away, and you're just like, if only, right? If they could have had this person. Yeah, so I get it. And you don't have, sometimes it's like, you know, like you got your Michael Bay explosions and all those kind of things. Sometimes when a scene is kind of, you know, there's not any meat and potatoes there, they'll throw some explosions and, oh, wow, it takes us away from a moment. We're cool. But with acting and we're only using your voice, there's so much. There's no room for error. You know, there really is.
It's very naked. It's very naked.
It's
very naked. It's very exposing.
Yeah.
And you can't cover it. You can't. It'll betray you straight away.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, you know, being a director now, you know, listening to auditions, it's very, very clear when someone connects with the material and when someone is just kind of skimming it and hasn't really thought about what they're doing. So it takes a lot more thought to go into it to get a character to feel, you know, 3-dimensional and something that people can relate to. Not only that, people's love affair with video games runs very, very deep.
Yes.
And if you betray those characters, you know, if you betray those franchises, you're in a lot of troll trouble.
Yes.
And they will let you know.
You almost have to go into voice relocation programs. Change your voice completely.
When I get lots of messages about, you know, why the servers aren't running on properly on Apex Legends, I'm like, I'm just the actor. I really don't run the servers. I'm so sorry. Yeah. I wish your experience was better. Yeah. I will give a call to Respawn and see if they can do something about it, but there really isn't much I can do.
Did you try rebooting?
You know, yeah, exactly. We tried playing it again. And that's most apparent in the stuff that Blizzard does. You know, World of Warcraft I've been doing voices on World of Warcraft for 15, 16 years. Wow. I've been directing it for the last 6 or 7 years, 8 years. The loyalty of that fandom, don't screw it up, because they will go right for the jugular. Yeah. And they're right to, you know, it's something that's been with them through their entire childhood. You know, this is something that's a very important part of people's lives.
Well, that you nailed it right on the head there. Speaking of being fans of something since childhood, I'm sure you're a big fan of Star Wars. I'm a diehard fan of Star Wars. I saw the first Star Wars with my dad in the movie theater. I remember seeing that. I don't have a lot of memories of my dad, but I remember that. That was awesome. You know, coming out to see Star Wars, and I'm a huge fan of multi-genre actor Mark Hamill. I love Mark Hamill. Like Harrison Ford went on to greatness in film, TV, and things like that. Mark Hamill, not so much as far as that, but video games. I mean, he owned it, and I love his contributions to Batman. Another homage to you. Now, was Mark Hamill ever? He's considerably older than you. Was he ever an inspiration to you, or is it someone that you look up to at all in the work?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, I saw Star Wars. I was 8.
Nice.
In 1977. It blew my mind, and Luke Skywalker was my hero forever, and Han Solo was my hero forever. And, I went through all the crushing disappointments of the second set and the redemption of the third. And the Mandalorian, I think, is one of the best tributes to Star Wars and one of the most evocative of the Star Wars world. And I'm fascinated by the way it was shot, because it was shot kind of like motion capture in a volume with these LED screens, and so that's kind of fascinating. I've run into Mark a number of times, and I'm very lucky to have run into. I've worked with him a few times, and I've run into him in studios all the time. He's the best raconteur I've ever heard. He just has stories galore and never tires of telling them. So if you're any kind of Star Wars geek, you're just like, what? Tell me this, tell me that, tell me the other, and he will hold forth and tell you. I once arrived at a session that he was the actor previous, and my session didn't start for 2 hours because we all just sat like this, just listening to Mark tell stories, because it was brilliant. He's, what he did as the Joker couldn't be further away from Luke Skywalker, and that kind of manipulative, maniacal, anger-based humor, it was kind of unique, and then on the game that the main Batman game that I worked on which was Arkham Origins, Roger Craig Smith and Troy Baker were asked to play the younger versions of Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, and Troy got a lot of, well, he just sounds like Mark Hamill. That's what the remit was, to sound like Mark Hamill, and he did a phenomenal job of capturing that with a younger kind of dynamism. So Mark's is one of those legacy voiceover actors. He his stuff will never die. His approach to character is detailed and committed, and he makes brave choices. And that's something I think you just can't help but admire as one of that group of people that gets to work with him. I feel incredibly privileged.
That's awesome. And I see him on social media really interacting with his fans. I mean, he's got millions of followers. I know it's tough to reply to everybody. He doesn't reply to everybody, but he does his best. And you're like that as well, too. I see you, retweeting people and sharing things. Like you're both very connected with your fans. Obviously, the fans, they make you what you are, and they have that base. And, it's nice to interact. But it's very, very cool to see, our heroes growing up, giving back to their fans and letting them know they're appreciated and things like that.
I think it's really important, and also, at no time in history have we had the means to do that we have now, and so the floodgates are open, and you actually can. I'm really not very good at social media. The Apex Legends cast, I'm one of the older ones. I've become one of the elder statesmen now, which seems crazy after 30 years in the business. But they're all very savvy on that stuff, and they were doing it. There was going to be a live signing on Streamily, and I mean that just sounded like Dutch to me. And I was like, well, what do I have to do? And they said, oh, it's really easy. You go on and you register and you set up your accounts and you open your store and then you get on your album, you import your own album. And I'm just like, whoa, hold the front page.
Yeah.
And then we did this thing, and actually it was remarkably simple. And it was great because, I mean, the chats go by so fast you can barely keep pace, but you could engage with certain questions. And there's a real connection there that was never there when I was a kid. Your heroes were just these distant kind of.
I know.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I'm anyone's heroes, but
oh, I think you
to
are.
Be able to interact, and then the gratitude that just by reaching out to a fan or sending them something signed, it's overwhelming. And the other thing I've learned about video gaming as well is that for a lot of I have a daughter who's on the spectrum, and a lot of these kids have not found any other way to communicate except with their peers through gaming. And when you go to conventions, and what we do is in a little black box in a studio in Burbank, and it's very hard to sort of see the end result or how that touches people. But military vets, kids who have learning disabilities or communication disabilities or disadvantages, they stand in front of you and weep because you have given them, without knowing it, a means to communicate and reach to the world. And that just every time it happens, and it happens a lot, I'm just blown away. It's something I never really expected. First of all, I never knew I was going to do any voices in anything when I arrived in Los Angeles. I'd done a movie called The Count of Monte Cristo. I was looking to carry on that. 9/11 happened, everything changed, and voiceover in video games was just beginning to really take off. It's like 2001, and everyone remembers when 9/11 was. And I sort of fell into it, and I never imagined that it would involve that kind of connection with an audience that I didn't even know existed, at the time. Boy, do I know they exist now, and I engage with them as much as I possibly can, because they're some of the most wonderful people in the world, and they're really committed to the stuff that you do.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, when you and I were kids, I mean, like our favorite artists, like let's say Led Zeppelin back in the day, the only way you'd know that they did something wrong is lead singer caught indecent exposure or something in a paper, and we had to wait for the paper to come out. Now we know what they had for dinner, where they and supper.
Exactly.
And, it's crazy. It's a double-edged sword. It can be really, really good, and it can be bad at the same time. But at least there is a vehicle for artists to give back, which is nice.
Yeah, but it's like anything in life. If you behave irresponsibly and stupidly, you're going to get caught.
That's right.
So conduct yourself reasonably.
That's right. I agree 100%. Here is a question from
slightly unreasonably. That's acceptable.
Yeah, that's acceptable.
I conduct myself slightly unreasonably.
Yeah, we got to let our hair down a little bit, right?
Yeah.
This is another super chat question from Lisa Love. Now she's referring to your character, and she says, when Gus had you looking over to Tio and his health progress, looking over Tio and his health progress, do you feel your character started to really understand and appreciate Gus's revenge and the lengths he was willing to go? For example, sending in a doctor from John Hopkins.
Man, you guys go deep.
They do. The Gilliverse fam is great.
Yeah, yes, I do. I think yes. I think I was. I felt a sense that he was involved on a much deeper level than he previously had been, and therefore, and particularly the way that Gus was acting around it. That Gus was seriously enraged, and I hadn't. I think if you have a friendship with someone, and over that friendship, you will learn the parameters of their emotional range. To see him in that way, and to see him turn on me and say, "I'll deal with it the way I want to deal with it," was kind of terrifying, and it did, I think, put the good doctor in a quite a different position. I think he was suddenly involved quite deeply in something that he hadn't necessarily anticipated previously. Although I think he spent a lot of time tidying up the mess.
Mm-hmm.
This was a major mess. This was something that was. An assault on Gus's, authority and or rather, a catalyst to him seizing that authority, which was put him in the doctor in a very, very interesting position. I feel like he's, they have this kind of friendship, and yet he still has to be very, very careful about how he treads around Gus.
Yeah,
Gus is such a phenomenal power.
Both your character and we talked about Jonathan earlier, so Mike Ehrmantraut, the couple, I would dare to say, well, we'll say those two for sure. I can think of others maybe, but that can get away with, I mean, Mike will give Gus a little bit of grief and guff, so to speak. Like, he can, when he's talking about letting Nacho go, like he wants to get out, he wants to, so he's overstepping his bounds a little bit, but he really, really has earned it. And even Gus a couple times has said, choose your next words carefully, but there's no chance Mike's going to get whacked by Gus. And your character doesn't go as deep off the side that Mike does, but there's still a good respect. There's not a lot of that from Gus. That the way those characters get away with it.
There's very few people that can stand up to him, I think, and Mike, I think, will stand up to anyone, and that's who Mike is.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also incredibly astute, and he will know where the line is. I think. Because our relationship clearly started on the basis of friendship, I think probably before any of this kicked off, that I think they go back a long way. I think they go back to sort of, late teenhood at least. I think I could stand up to him, but I'd be, if the hand came up, I would back down.
Mm-hmm.
And so my nudging of him is what I feel is his benefit. And no one tells Gus what's to his benefit. He decides.
Yeah, he doesn't surround himself with yes men, does he?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. And he'll listen to opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But that was what was different about this, was that he was so inflamed. He was so in such a high tense state that I think in that scene, I had to read him and just say, yes, sir.
Yeah.
You're clearly not going to back down from this, and I don't want to jeopardize that. I don't want to jeopardize that relationship.
But it is still at the same time showing no weakness, no fear, because an animal smells fear and they attack you, right? And I think if any character, if any character showed fear to Gus Fring, you're either gone or and then now you're a witness to his organization, and you're in a barrel.
And I think clearly he has a certain amount of status because from a professional perspective, Gus does need him.
Yeah.
He needs a crooked doc. He needs someone who's going to get him in the facility where we can treat someone without any questions being asked. And so there is a certain amount of power, and that coupled with the friendship and the fact that he knows Gus will listen to him, but he won't necessarily do what he wants him to do. That was a very special connection. And, incredibly frustrating because I got very few opportunities really to explore that. I was constantly like, go on, put me in another episode. Please
yes.
give me another little bit to just, there was so little involvement I'm extremely grateful for any involvement at all. But, when you've got a character that's coming and people are writing to you about it, you just think, there's more in there. There's more in there.
A little sparring match, a little bit back and forth, right? Yeah.
You're onto something good when you're as an actor, you just want to play it more. You just want to play it more.
Yeah. Give me more Gus. I'm going to jump over to the audio questions we've got, and you kind of touched base on one of them. We were talking earlier about Barry. So from one of our moderators, and this is from Karina. She's going to ask you a question about Barry, I believe, and we've got a follow-up question from Lori coming up. So here's some audio questions right now.
Hi, JB. This is Karina. You had quite the big entrance as Batir on the HBO series Barry at the end of season 2. Since the show is supposedly getting a 3rd and 4th season, will we be seeing more of you and not just your voice? Can you say? I think it's safe to say your character will be a major badass.
So yeah, you touched base a little bit on that. So yeah.
Thanks, Karina. Yeah, it was Batir was the grin that changed the world. No. Yeah, I basically got to show up and grin and laugh. But it was a great entrance. And then, then I didn't hear anything. Then it was very quiet. And then I heard that season 3 was going to happen. We did the table read for the first 2 episodes in which I was involved. And I cannot say anything about it.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay.
But we did the table read. And I think 2 days later, everything shut down. And so a lot can change. Yeah. A lot of rewrites can happen. Bill and Alec could have just taken that and just gone in a completely different direction. I don't think they knew what restrictions we'd have to shoot under. The restrictions have involved, lesser numbers of cast. I've been directing performance capture. We were very strictly governed by SAG on how many actors we could use, how many people we had on the stage, what the protocols were. I was tested every 2 days with the brain tickler up the nose testing. I must have had 50 of them. Oh, it's deeply unpleasant. So that was very frustrating. And then it was kind of sit and wait. And then I sort of got a notice from casting. We're like, well, if the character survives, we're planning to start shooting on X, Y, and Z. And I was like, if the character survives? God, I just arrived. So I don't know what's going to happen. They're going to dress me up in the same clothes and I'm going to get shot in the head. So, with shows like these and with shows like, especially like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, how tight-lipped Aaron and Brian had to be.
Oh, geez.
That people, years and years of questions of what's going to happen, and everyone wants to know. We can't say. No. I mean, it would be the end of my career.
Yeah.
So I will tell you, I hope there's involvement. I know there's early involvement. I will be able to tell you that. How that manifests itself or what happens in the story, I actually have no idea. But involvement is all I can really say. So I'm sorry I can't answer that more deeply.
That's okay. No, that's okay. We get it. I mean, a lot of times there's NDAs involved and all that kind of good stuff. We all know what it's like for sure. It's and sometimes the actors are even kind of out of the loop. I know.
Absolutely.
Having both Ray Seahorn and Patrick Fabian on the show before, and Tom was talking about this as well too. They're texting each other back and forth that they get the script. I'm still alive. Are you alive? This kind of thing, right? They don't know until sometimes the day of receiving the scripts.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
And that's tremendously exciting and kind of nerve-wracking too. So yeah, I know we start shooting soon, mm-hmm. and that's really all I do know. And I honestly don't know how the character develops through the season. So it's anyone's. I could be dead after episode 2. I don't know.
Well, the thing is, you're a fan like we are, right? So I mean, it's got to be exciting for you too. You don't necessarily want the spoiler.
No, and also whatever's best for the story, whatever keeps people engaged, and whatever works best for the show. I mean, I think, I'm fairly ego-free on that. It's really whatever's going to time out best and work best for the show. I'm down. Mm-hmm. For me, I still get the biggest kick is being involved at all. It's an honor. I've had been involved with some really great shows, so that's enough for me. I'm delighted.
Well, that's fantastic. And sometimes people just shake their heads like, why would this actor go up to the director or whoever and say, I want my character needs to be killed off? Now, either they're getting a better gig somewhere else, or they really think it does benefit the story. We talk about Star Wars, Harrison Ford, right, wanting to kill off Han Solo, and it actually it was sad, but I mean it had some purpose, didn't it?
Yeah, and then of course Aaron was due to be killed off.
Yes,
right at the very beginning.
I know.
I believe.
Yeah,
and they went, well, wait, no, this guy. No one says bitch like this guy. We gotta have him.
We can't get another person to say bitch. I know. All right, let me jump over to a question. Another audio. This is our last audio question for the evening. This is from Lori. She usually has some deep questions, so I didn't get a chance to listen to this one fully.
I'm terrified of the deep questions.
I know.
I never get deep questions like this in video game interviews. This is terrifying.
Never going to do my show again.
Hi there, JB. This is Lori. I'm more self-conscious of my own voice tonight, speaking to such a great voice actor, but here we go. How does one get a job teaching drama at a prison, and what was that experience like? Also, how did the name John White come about, and how long was it used? Thanks very much.
Wow. Okay, well, John White was a pseudonym that I used for different kinds of projects. I can't really say much about that, but in the early days of trying to get into the union and being union eligible, I was still doing non-union work, so I used it as a non-union name. But that was, obviously, as soon as I got into the union, that changed. And then, I left RADA in like 1990. Yes, I'm really old, and there wasn't much work around, and I had lots of different jobs, like most actors. I worked in a cheese shop. I sold rugs on a market. I used to clear British Telecom telephone lines of trees.
Oh, jeez.
Did that for a while. I did a lot of manual labor. I worked a lot of bars and pubs. I managed a restaurant. And then a friend of mine was teaching sociology at Wandsworth Prison. And we were roommates, in fact. He moved into my place through another friend. And he said, they're looking for a drama teacher. I think you'd be great. And so I went in and interviewed with them. And they, based on the experience I had and based on what I was doing, they got me in. Then you have to go through this very rigorous, vetting process to work, because it's a government job and it's a dangerous job. And it was a dangerous job. I did it for about a year, and it got a little hairy. And Wandsworth Prison was particularly a high maximum security prison, and it had a lot of remand prisoners, which are prisoners who are just put away to wait for their trials. And they were the lifers, the guys who'd done the serious stuff, the guys who were in there for life. They were a dream. They were very, very easy. It was the remand prisoners who really didn't give a damn and were sort of doing education just to get out of the cell. They were the ones that were dangerous, and I got jumped a couple of times, and and I was armed with a whistle. That's all I had. And if I blew that whistle, the walls came alive and the guards came out. But the two times I was jumped, it was lifers who protected me. There was no prison guard in the room with me. And I learned a lot doing it. On the main wing, I taught on the main wing, and I taught on the vulnerable prisoner unit. The vulnerable prisoner unit is for sex offenders and people who have done bad deals in prison and whose lives are in danger. And on the main wing, we would do theater games. We'd do, the kind of stuff you see on Whose Line Is It Anyway? Basic drama stuff, getting these guys to just sort of open up and improvise and experience things. On the main wing, on the vulnerable, that was on the main wing. On the vulnerable prisoner unit wing, it was by and large middle class, well-educated people, which was kind of terrifying. And I couldn't really deal with the fact, because I find, it's very hard. Yes, I believe in rehabilitation, but working with people who've done those kinds of things, I found very difficult.
Yeah.
It just morally and consciously, I met some very deeply troubled people. And I think often the prison system has to take on people that really shouldn't be in the prison system, that should be in catered, proper mental health facilities that, governments have been closing for years, both here and in England, which is, why we have so many problems, I think, there. Wow, that got deep and sociologically political, didn't it?
Have you taken any of that? Because, that is a dark time in some ways for you. Have you taken any of that into some of your work? If there's a character...
I've taken buying cigarettes at 16 in a store into my work. Everything you do as an actor has to go into your work. You can't help it. I think I think once you decide to be an actor, you just look at the world in a different way and you start absorbing things in a different way. And so, yes, absolutely, it's all come in handy. And, you know, the experience is a crazy experience. Before you start working there, they take you into a room and they show you all the drugs and weapons that they found in the prison in the last month. And they are not inconsiderable. And the prisoners can make a weapon out of soap.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah.
And so it's very sobering. It's very, very sobering. And then also you hear stories that could have been me.
Mm-hmm.
1, 2 bad decisions, got in with the wrong crowd, boom, done. And his life's over.
Yeah.
And it's very hard not to empathize with someone who's you know, been accused of something that they didn't do, or, you know, just for a couple of bad decisions ended up with the wrong crowd. And that brings us right back into the subject of this interview, which is, you know, that's exactly what happens to him.
That's right. I mean, we'll use a Better Call Saul reference right now. Bad choice road, right? You just take one turn off one time in your life. Yeah, you might just be a passenger. You might just be the passenger. But
absolutely,
you're associated.
And the prisons are full of those people. The prisons are full of those people.
You're associated.
You know, I was asked to deliver a car from one place to another. Happened to be packed with drugs.
Yeah.
I honestly didn't know, and my life is over. I lost everything, and it's hard not to sympathize with someone like that.
I agree.
You know? I think the world needs more empathy and understanding. And I many times in that prison, I thought, wow, that could have been me.
Yep.
You know,
did you see? I know you don't have time to watch movies, but did you see Clint Eastwood's Mule?
Oh, sure.
It was.
Absolutely.
Didn't you actually root for him as a? Yeah, and we know he's doing bad things, but I loved him.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the same. It's the same with Walter. You know, you understand why he made that choice, and given that, what would you do? You have no health insurance, or you it's running out. You have nothing, and your family's going to end up with nothing. Your kid's going to get no education. Where's the line?
Yeah.
At what point do you step across it?
Yeah.
And I think that setting up that moral dilemma is the key to it all, and that's what keeps you engaged all the way through. It's fantastic.
Walter White, you know, good intentions.
There you go.
Yeah, look where that went, right? A few last questions as we're getting down to the top of the hour. This is a question from Zoko Santos, and I love the Lego games. He's asking, are you excited for the new Lego Star Wars game?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love what Lego does with games. I actually directed Lego Batman 3 Beyond Gotham, and I got to direct a game called Lego Dimensions, which was a big game with Gary Oldman as my lead villain, who was so incredible to work with. I can't tell you. He was just the most phenomenal. He's my kind of example when stars, and they can be grumpy and shitty sometimes, when they are, I always think, listen, Gary Oldman walked into this studio and said, what can I give you? And just tell me everything you need. I will give you everything you need and more. And I'm always like, if he could do it, you could probably do it too. The great thing about Lego games is that they're wonderful adventures for kids, but they're superb adventures for adults. They're written in a very clever way in which both adults and kids can enjoy them together. And I think that, and when you've got a franchise as unifying as Star Wars, you've got gold.
Yeah.
They're super fun.
You nail it when you said made for the adults and the kids as well too, because there's always just like the animated movies, you know, there's always an adult reference in there,
bit of adult humor in there,
to keep us,
without alienating kids, without alienating either side. They incorporate both sides in a very clever way, and I think it's very much that's what they drive at, and they achieve it. It's great.
It goes right over the kids' heads, and we're sitting there over there chuckling, but I've spent many hours on the Lego games for sure. Indiana Jones and Star Wars and things like that as well too.
Sure.
Here, this is a good question. So we always wonder, like, whether it's a song, the song that you wish you wrote, or. So here's a question from Max O'Brien. Says, is there any job that you wish you'd gotten in the past? You're like, oh, I wish I could have got that game, or is there one that you can talk about that you wish you would have got a gig?
Oh God, there's not. There's hundreds. There's hundreds.
Hundreds.
I think the only way you can really think of this is that your favorite job is the one you haven't had yet.
Sure.
And I think that keeps it real and in perspective. I'm not someone who likes to live in regret and go, God, I was so good finally, because I've had too many of those. I've been in rooms with Spielberg. I've been close to the big cherry. Those opportunities don't come up as often as they used to, but I think all actors have been in that place. And I think Brian talked extensively about this in terms of, just patient, just be patient. Don't quit, keep going, do the best work, worry about what's on the page in front of you. there are certain franchises that I would love to be, but I mean, I've been able to play Bane in Batman Telltale games and in the Arkham franchise. Apex Legends is a golden goose. It's amazing, and it's a huge job for me. So I try not to think that way. I always try and look forward and think, okay, what's next? Otherwise, I think you could spiral pretty quickly, because there isn't an actor on this planet that hasn't missed lots of jobs that they would like to have done.
You strike me as a person too, that if you had a colleague and maybe you're both vying for the same gig, and maybe one of your colleagues that you're friends with got it, you strike me as the type of person to be like, you meant fantastic, let's go out for a beer and celebrate or whatever. Like,
no, I'm going to knife him in the throat.
Well, there's that prison experience, right? But the bar is so bright.
But this is something I do want to say about the voice-over community, is that happens all the time. And my biggest competitors are also my best friends. We all came up in this industry together. So, for instance, Fred Tatasciore, I could never be Fred Tatasciore, but we are always up for the same things. And most of the time he gets it, and sometimes I do. We couldn't be happier for each other. We're very close friends. We have dinners together all the time. I get to work with them all the time. And if I'm unavailable, there are 5 people that I would immediately recommend, and they would immediately recommend me as well. And so it's a really supportive industry in that sense, which is something that, it's a little harder on camera. On camera, people are more paranoid about the way they look. They've got more to protect. Those big jobs are really, really big. No one's going to be a millionaire from a video game role. But the ethos of that side of the industry is mutually supportive. And that's true of directors, actors, everyone involved. Because it's a difficult thing to do, and when an industry is hard, it's not like, it's a more technically difficult job, and I think you can only relate to someone who's been in there, and I think that's why I'm having some success as a director, is because I've been through everything they could go through in the booth, and they know I've got their back. Because ultimately, happy, productive people produce happy, productive work. They produce great work. People who are miserable and paranoid, I don't think produce as great work. And it's another thing I'd say about Better Call Saul. I've worked on a lot of shows, probably 30 TV shows. There are miserable sets and there are happy sets. And Breaking Bad from day one, because of who was at the top, because of Brian, Aaron, and Jonathan, that top team, and Anna too.
Trickled down.
It was a unique set, in which everyone involved, down to the smallest PA, knew that they were involved in something very, very special. And I was constantly treated with respect and looked after very, very well. And it's rare that happens. And so, it's one of the greatest experiences of my career.
Well, that's fantastic. And that applies to anything in life too. I mean, happy people produce happy, results. You can tell right away when you can go get a hamburger. You get a hamburger and you can tell that person just lost someone in their family or they're divorced. It's like, oh my God, I feel so sorry for this person that just made my burger. Instead of being mad about the burger, you're like, their life must be horrible. Look what they did.
But something they must have gone through something great. Yeah. Again, it's my philosophy. Again, the world needs empathy.
I agree.
It's understanding that's going to get us through.
That's right. A super chat question from Richard O'Brien. We talked about Mark Hamill earlier, but he's asking, can you name some of your other career influences, people that really inspired you throughout? Maybe in games and possibly on screen as well.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many actors that I've admired over the years. Gary Oldman has obviously been one, but I was a huge Richard Burton fan. I was a huge I got to work with for God's sake, on The Count of Monte Cristo, Richard, and I'm being so crazy, Irish actor anyway. Those great actors. I went to drama school at the Royal Academy. Their legacy is everywhere. It's all around you. And so you can't help but be inspired by them. I was, the greats, Jack Nicholson, Dustin Hoffman. Dustin Hoffman came to my drama school and talked to us, and I was just blown away by his approach and his sensitivity and his, he was the one that really taught me about empathy as an actor. I've got to read and do work with Al Pacino, who's an extraordinary actor who has a whole different theory on. The great thing is that there's such a range of stuff that is available to you as an actor, and such a range of methodologies and choices that people make. Al's thing is that everyone has this contained actor, this contained anger inside them.
Yeah.
And that's what he's constantly working against that. And then when it blows out, it really blows out. And so there's a million different influences. And I also don't think you should ever be afraid of watching and stealing and learning. Watching other actors is a great way to figure it out. And you understand just the way in which they interpret things, the gentleness of touch, whatever it might be. When I first heard Mark do the Joker, of course, it was incredibly inspirational, and Kevin doing Batman too.
Yeah,
that's a pairing that really was kind of one in a million magical, and so you always look up to those people.
I'm really glad you mentioned Al Pacino, because if I had to pick one actor, I have a nice list of favorite actors, male and female, but Al Pacino will be my top number one. If I could only have one actor left to watch, his work, and Scarface is so close to my heart. And it was when I had Stephen Bauer, Don Eladio, I had him on the show here back probably a good few months ago. And I don't fanboy out when I do these shows. I mean, I respect my guests. I respect you. I love your work, but I get my stuff into check. Once I hang up the show and say goodnight to you, then I go fanboy out. I'm like, oh my God, I just talked to JB Blanc, right? But on camera, I'm keeping my shit
together. You need to raise your bar a little higher.
Well, I keep my shit together while I'm talking to you. But having Stephen Bauer on the show, Manny from Scarface, I was like, wow, and I still kept it together, but it was tough. That's great.
But here's the thing with Al as well, is that it's hit and miss. He's not always going to be fantastic. He's gone through periods of his career where there was bad choices, which we all make, but he's always committed. He's always risky, and it's always interesting to watch. And it's dangerous to watch. Mm-hmm. That's something I think you aspire to as an actor, because living that close to the edge is always fascinating to watch. It's rare that you get the opportunity to play roles like that.
Agreed. Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of actors like Keanu Reeves, right? I mean, some of the things he's done is phenomenal, but there's been some, but it's choices, right? We don't know when we make them. It's sometimes, like I say,
they were recording Cyberpunk 77 when 2077 when I was recording at the same studio I record Fortnite at, and so I got to meet him a couple of times. Again. And literally one of the most. And then if you do your research on Keanu Reeves, you realize what an amazing human being he is. I'll forgive him any acting crimes. I don't care. We've all committed them. I was in Garfield: A Tale of Two Kitties. Don't tell anyone. But he gives away like 90% of his income to philosophical needs, and is one of the most generous people you could ever wish to meet. And I got to stand in a room and drink coffee and tour motorbikes with him, which is amazing.
Oh my God, it's fantastic. He's one of those guys that we can safely say, there's a few people like him. There's a lot of people like him, but we use him as an example that we're never going to see a TMZ, dun, 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 and you're going to see something really bad about Keanu Reeves. It's just like, you're not going to see that. Right?
Nope.
Even when he does photos, especially with women, he'll put his arm around them without even touching them. It's a hover. Yep. And it just respect.
Just a respectful human being.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Well, as we get ready to wrap up here, a lot of fans like to know this, and I'm asking personally myself as well too. You talked earlier about being a fan of the Gilliverse, Breaking Bad, and you didn't come in right off the pilot or anything like that. So can you maybe tell us a little bit about the audition process? Sometimes some of these characters and actors will apply for something else, or they audition for something else, they get something else. Tell us your involvement and how you became part of it.
I can't remember whether I'd done some auditions for Sherry Thomas and Sharon Bialy before, and we kind of started a relationship, and it just sort of came out of the blue. And it's a tricky one, because I don't know if I would get cast as that character now. I have a lot of Latino friends who are actors. I've always felt slightly guilty because I've played a number of Latino roles. My family are from the southwest of France, which literally borders Spain, about 100 miles away. That's where my heritage is. So I've kind of thought, well, can I kind of get away with it? I don't think I can anymore. And so it was a surprise that I got considered. My Latino friends who are actors have always said, listen, if you're the best man for the job, then it's a done deal. We don't care. So that's very generous of them. But there are roles now that I will turn down as a result. So it just kind of came out of the blue. And when I read it, you know, there's just some roles that you just go, I think I know who this guy is. I think it just fits. And it doesn't happen often. Often you're trying to search, and I think as an actor, often you're trying to second guess what they're looking for. And I think that's dangerous. I think you have to just worry about what you're, you know, I used to get sides and go, oh, well, he kisses the girl. They're not going to cast me. They want a young, handsome dude. And then the switch came, and it was like, okay, well, what's JB's angle on this? What is my take on this character? And I think that is a great way of actors being able to assume that power, because really, the casting have a problem, and you want to be the solution. It's not a test. You're not going to let yourself down unless you don't do the work. And I went in, and I could see that they were vibing off it immediately, and it just fit. I don't know why. It's very hard to explain, but it was one of those ones this time that just fit. They also cast Barry, and I was auditioning for something else. And she said, oh, listen, can you come back in a couple of days? Because there's something else in Barry. And I said, I can't, I'm directing. How long have you got? She said, well, I've got lunch in about 15 minutes. I said, well, listen, give me 10 minutes with the sides and I'll just have a look. And because of voice acting, thank God, I've become very good at quickly kind of scanning scripts and making choices. And then, because in video games, you don't get the scripts until you walk into the studio. Oh. Very rarely do you get the scripts before you walk in to record. When I did Bane, I didn't know what character I was playing, what game I was doing when I walked in that studio for the first session.
You're now Bane.
And in 10 minutes, I had to make choices about the characters with that team that I was going to play for the next year.
Wow.
So that's very intimidating to most actors.
Yeah.
You know, you have zero time. I find it, and I'm kind of twisted in this, that I find it incredibly liberating because I've had to do it. You know, that's been acting off the back foot has been my career. And so I made some very specific choices. He was on the phone. I decided that he'd just come in from Chechnya, and he couldn't get his watch to work. So I did the whole phone call going, Barry, you know, you've really disappointed the family. And I don't know if you understand how crazy you're being right now. But it gave me something to play. I made very quick choices. And again, it was one of those things that just kind of fit. So you never know. I've done reams of auditions for one role that I never got.
Yeah,
you know, and you just don't know. But that doctor just kind of knew him. I knew where he was at, and I hope I did him justice. You know.
Well, it's fantastic. Well, I'm so glad that you brought up the casting directors too. As we wrap up here, I was telling you off the air as well. I want to get some of their staff on as well too. I mean, I'm a big Walking Dead fan, and they work in the Walking Dead realm as well too. But there's these characters that we don't necessarily always see, and then we're going to be talking about hearing them. So kudos to the casting directors for bringing us the talents like yourself and all these other great characters. But also the music, like Dave Porter, I know what he does. I mean, it's a character in itself. Bryan Cranston has said personally that Dave Porter's music is a character. And tomorrow we're going to be having one of his colleagues, Thomas from Super Music Vision, on the show, and picking all the great music that's made the show so good as well too. So we'll be looking forward to that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
The sound of Breaking Bad is boom, 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 and Better Call Saul. It's like that. It's just like. Yeah, that dry desert guitar that just feels right. It just feels right.
As a guitar player, you get it. You get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
and also, you know, I do want to put in a word in for Sherry Thomas and Sharon Bialy. They are two of the best casting directors I've ever seen in the industry. They're at the top of their game. They do Handmaid's Tale. The work they're producing is phenomenal, and I have to say that because they keep casting me in lovely roles. So
yeah,
no, I genuinely am a huge fan of their work. Just as a fan of TV,
yeah,
because the stuff I see, I'm always blown away by what they do. So
I want to invite them on. I think the fans would love to have them.
You should, yeah. Oh my God, they would. I mean, yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah, you should try.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, I'm going to say goodbye to you off the air, but I just want to mention a few other thanks as well, too. So first of all, thank you especially for making this happen. We had to reschedule, but I appreciate that. You can't fix technology, right, when it goes down. We lost internet there. But I wanted to say a big thank you to our executive producer, Sandra Lee, for everything she does. Our show sponsors, Warren and Rachel at bobbleheads.com. Also like to thank all of our channel members, our Patreon supporters. I do have to look at a list on this. Channel moderators, our YouTube subscribers, our super chatters, subscribers are PayPal donators, and those that purchase our merch, like I'm wearing right here from the Broadstash Boutique, you can get yourself a coffee mug, and this one happens to have some Gatorade in it. The Gatorade does not come included. And if this is your first time checking out our channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button down below. We will work just as hard to keep you as a subscriber as we did to get you. And tune in tomorrow at special time, Saturday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Thomas does podcasts like on this time right now tonight, so that's why he couldn't make it. So we're doing special time. Check us out at Instagram and Facebook at Inside the Gilliverse, and we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. Hard to believe we're doing it tomorrow night. JB, don't go away. Say goodbye to you off the air. Everyone, have a fantastic evening, and be safe out there, and we'll see you real soon. Until next time, cheers.
Thanks again for tuning into Inside the Gilliverse with Eric Broadbent. Be sure to check back each week for more great discussions and interviews with cast and crew from Breaking Bad, El Camino, and Better Call Saul. Please like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends.